Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show. This is eLearnChat, where it's all about learning. My name is Rick Zanotti, and I'm joined today by Dr. Susan Nash. How are you doing, Susan?
Oh, great. I'm really excited about our guest. We have a chance to think about the positive things, how we can learn through adversity. And our guest is an engineer who did just that.
She did, and we'll introduce her in a moment. Here we go. This show is sponsored by Relate Corporation, Digital Learning, Corporate Video, Learning Design, and Management Consulting. Visit us at www.relatecasts.net. Thanks. And joining us in that center position of power, she's coming to us from Houston in Texas. It is Meisong Yan. How are you, Meisong?
Very good. Good afternoon, good evening if you are from other places, and really appreciate this opportunity to be in this show and talk to Rick and Susan.
Our pleasure. Susan.
Well, I'm just really happy here. And you and I met each other, I guess, about 7 or 8 years ago in Austin. We were at a conference. And it was a workshop, and I was really impressed with your experience in problem solving in engineering and oil and gas. And then we hit the pandemic, and you attended, I think, one or two of the workshops. But I thought that one of that we had online, and during that time, I didn't realize is that you were working on actually showing how that complete collapse of the industry really led to a lot of creativity and innovation. And I just love the fact that you documented that, and you've actually written a book. Would you like to tell us a little bit about it?
Yes. The objective or the goal of this book is record what had happened in the industry during pandemic. And when I joined the industry, oil and gas was in the booming time, starting from 2000 to 2015. We enjoyed the whole commodity price. We drill more wells. Then suddenly we had price drop. We had a collapse of the commodity price. Then we thought we are getting out of it. We had the pandemic. We had one thing in my book, we talk about the negative WTI price is really a shock for everybody, because that means we produce something and we make something. We still need to pay somebody to take this black oil from a wellhead. That's kind of against the first principles. Then I thought with this double hit, why not record it? And then when we go back to the boom season and we can remember what happened, especially in 2023, now everybody is talking about the possible economic recession. Then I think, okay, our industry already experienced this significant downtime already with double hit, commodity price collapse and the pandemic. And what we learned right now maybe can be used or can be borrowed by other industries. So it's not, I wouldn't say it's a lot of, I would say it's more like a reflection, and also people can agree and disagree. I don't think what I said, I record here, will be just totally the way it should go. But I'm looking forward to feedbacks, comments, and what other people think about the pandemic and the possible economic recession.
Well, and I like the fact that you point out that there are boom bust cycles in commodities. Oil and gas is one, but we forget them when we think that we're in a boom cycle. We think, oh, it'll always last, and when we're in a bust cycle, we think, oh my gosh, it'll never end. This is the end of our world. And so, as you say that people talk about how we're going into a recession, what are some of the things that we should remember? How are ways that we can innovate?
That's a good question. I pretty much put my thoughts and those tips I collected from LinkedIn in the second sector. So there's some transferable skills we could have. One industry may be suffering right now, some other industry may be boom. And right now, really, pandemic really accelerated everything in digital age. So some digital skill set we need to have. Plus, there are a lot of online learnings. Today, I attended the Susan's lithium mining webinar. I think it's great because it's related to oil and gas industry, and where people in oil field can not only can generate or produce oil and gas, but those precious minerals for renewables. And I really enjoyed that webinar.
Oh, thank you. It was lively. Lots of interest.
Well, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was thinking about what you were saying about how people react to challenges, to opportunities, to disasters. And I think a lot of people they may have strategized incorrectly in terms of what happened with oil, because the U.S. got hit really hard by oil, I would say by political maneuvering of oil more than anything else, pipeline closures for no reason and things like that. But also, they opened the door wide open without any idea what was going on to the Middle East saying, no, we don't want to deal with you anymore. We're going to change, because they were hurt by this pandemic too. And I think they've economically decided maybe going with the U.S. isn't a good, smart move. And a lot of people are looking at getting off the petrodollar. We got the BRICS movements and other things. So I think you're right. It's absolutely opportune. It's the opportunists who are now saying the U.S. is weak. We can jump in and do something. And I think part of that's what's been going on. And it's interesting because they did look at the opportunity, looked at the mess, looked at all the things going on. What choice did people have? They either collapse or they continue forward with some new idea. What do you think?
You raised a great question. So, oil and gas industry has big uncertainties caused by the geopolitical situation. Then from each individual side, that's something we couldn't control. So we have to just go with it, do what we could do. That's why I have to promote my book again in the section 2. I talk about the hobbies, like during difficult time, build some hobbies and have a good mental side to restart. One, also get a good mentor. And I have been benefited from great mentors from volunteer organizations from my workplace. And they told me a lot of good things, how to go through this. And they had experienced all the downturns one way or another. So those are great resources. Each individual we could do that will help us to get through those difficult times as much as possible. Yeah. That's my opinion.
Now, do you think this current oil crisis and how it's affected the industry, especially in the West, is the worst crisis we've had, or have there been others that were just about as bad?
Let me think about it. I think I did not experience the Great Recession, but I heard that's probably the worst one in the history of United States. Then another one I could think would be more on the geopolitical side. For example, the conflict or the war between Russia and Ukraine, I
Yeah.
feel really sad. I feel really sad. I mean, it
Yeah.
shouldn't go this way. It shouldn't go this way.
It's a senseless war. Now, Susan, you remember in this? This was the early, probably '80s, late '80s, maybe mid to end '80s. Texas really got hit hard by an oil crisis. Do you remember that? Where Texans were running out of that state so fast into California and everywhere else because there were no jobs.
Well, yeah, and that kind of relates back to resiliency that Meisong is talking about. So if we think about, and also the geopolitical issues. So if you remember the boom that occurred for two reasons. One, there was OPEC, and so there was an oil embargo, and so that OPEC decided to restrict the production in order to keep prices high. At the same time, the U.S. government gave huge tax incentives to what was called ultra deep gas. And so there was a lot of incentive to produce that, and the prices were high. There was also tax incentive to produce coal bed methane. Now, then there was a windfall profits tax, because that was called. So there were things that kind of militated against the success. But then that completely changed, and OPEC decided to open the floodgates and flood the world with oil. The price collapsed, went from, I don't know, $40 or $50 a barrel to $7 or $8 a barrel, and it stayed $7 or $8 a barrel for a long time. And so, as a result, there was a huge exodus. And I'm trying to think of any type of things that happened during that time. I use that as an opportunity to diversify. So I followed what Meisong was talking about, and I studied economic development and economics and leadership, or different types of communications, etc. So I stayed in the industry, but I diversified. I also went into minerals. And who were the survivors? The survivors were the creative ones. And so they developed new technologies for offshore, being able to drill offshore deep water. And they also developed hydraulic fracking in long laterals, so you can improve the permeability of tight shales or tight rocks of any type, Austin chalk. And so it led to shale boom. So what Meisong's saying is absolutely on target. It makes you creative, and also it may either make you more of a gambler or more fiscally conservative. It's interesting.
And those two don't always go together, the gambler and the conservative with creativity. It's an interesting combo there.
But Meisong, what did you do so you talked about hobbies. What did you do during the pandemic?
During the pandemic, I start to learn a little bit of cooking. One is I don't want to go outside to get the food, and cooking at home with kids can also help us to relax, enjoy good food. Another secret is I wanted my two boys who could learn cooking, eventually feed themselves and please their future girlfriends. So cooking skill definitely will collect, it's kind of a magnitude, attract a lot of good people surrounding you. You know how to cook.
That's
That's
interesting.
good.
Well, there was a show here years ago. That's why I thought when I saw your name, I was going, Yan can cook. And the name of the show was Yan Can Cook. He was a famous cook from China. He was great. And so I wasn't that far off. Everybody said, he's kidding. No, maybe Yan can cook. You do cook.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's great.
Well, that's not what I did. I hoarded trail mix. I got so tired of it.
My wife says anytime you're fed up with it, send it to her. She likes trail mix.
And also learned a lot of not just Chinese cooking, but American cooking, like make a hamburger, make a sandwich. Because typically I had that luxury to eat a lot of Chinese food almost every day, since there are so many Chinese restaurants in Houston. So we can change restaurants. We have tons of different Chinese vegetables, and but I start to learn some different cooking from different countries, and we share among friends. We kind of took a picture, show off in the social media, say what we cooked. One thing I need to learn, one thing I want to learn is about making a cake. I haven't made any cakes so far.
Cakes are good.
Well, so did you do any like hot pots and things like that?
Oh, hot pots is relatively easy. You need to get the raw material right. Then hot pot, because you don't need to control the temperature. You don't need to control the how you want to stir your dish. You just put it into the hot pot, get it ready. So that's the easiest one.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Now, it's interesting because as you were talking about opportunities, I don't think as many people as we think took those opportunities. A lot of people just sat around watching Netflix. Netflix started doubling in income because of that. And there was not a lot of people said, okay, people went on Zoom. Well, that wasn't necessarily creative. They were already on Zoom or WebEx or something else. But some people, like you said, and this is always going to be the minority, who think of the opportunity and try to get something out of it. But a large majority didn't do much. They just sat around going, life sucks. And they didn't do anything.
Well,
and that's
they got
common.
addicted to things.
They what?
They got addicted to things.
Well, yeah, there were bad addictions, yes.
Sadly, I mean, I think that happened a lot. And I think that was compounded by depression, because at the end of the day, we need each other. And so when you were talking about cooking and cooking with your family, that is just so healing. And it reminded me of writing workshops. I mean, a lot of people I heard said, oh, I'm going to write. I'm going to do a lot of writing. But they found that without being able to share it and read to each other and interact, they just felt no inspiration.
Yeah.
So I think
a lot of people gave up. They just gave up.
Well, one of the things you talked about in your book is you talked about how people started working in teams and digitally, like using different technologies to work in remote or work remotely in teams where they could actually collaborate.
That's one of the skill set I found out we need to learn to be good at it, because I see it's going to be the trend that remote collaboration. And we meet people, we do the in-house or in-office work together under one roof, but we also need to learn how to collaborate with people not in this location. Why is digitalization in all the industry, not just oil and gas. Secondly, is that's how we can re-establish ourselves. If we just limit ourselves in one location, one job, one discipline, not get to know what we are outside of the world, and then we will have a difficult time in the future because downturn, geopolitical situation will happen, then economic recession. It's kind of a circle. It will happen one day or another in certain industry on somebody. We need to learn how to cope with it and with that remote scale. Like I learned when I talk to somebody remotely by virtual meeting, I need to look at the camera, not my slides. Because
Right.
other people look at you from the screen, they feel you're looking down or you're up. But if you look at the camera, people from the other screen, they can say, oh, you are looking at me right now.
Right, you're
So,
engaging. You're engaging with your audience, and that makes a big difference.
huge difference. Yeah.
Yeah.
And another one is need to engage the remote audiences. Like before, in the in-house situation, I can walk into the audience, walk toward the audience, and have that engaging activities to ask them. Now, with online, remote, virtual situation, we need to learn how to engage audiences. A lot of apps or features developed. You can ask questions, take a poll for a couple of 5 minutes to make sure your audience are listening to you, not falling asleep or
Right.
open another screen or doing something else.
Yep.
So that's a small tips I learned. I feel that could be very useful. And I understand during the pandemic, people feel down, and we need to get out ourselves. And nobody can help us if we don't do this ourselves. We do something we could control. If something happens, it's God's will, and we cannot do anything. We just go with it.
Yeah. Now you mentioned.
That's a really interesting point. Oh,
go ahead.
well, thanks. Well, it's just sort of like everything that strikes me is that we are learning about ourselves and things we may have not wanted to know about ourselves, but we have to confront them.
Yes. It's like when I finished writing this book, it's kind of a retrospect of what I was thinking 2 or 3 years ago. Now I have maybe different opinion, different thoughts. So I found out that there are more things I could learn, and I don't have time to learn. It's making me feel I should even more humble myself right now.
Now we're running out of time, so I want to ask one question because I was looking a little bit at your book. I don't have the book, but I was looking at what was on Amazon, and it said that you used ChatGPT to help you as kind of a writing aid.
Well, that's the how I have a page list all the links of the post I have. So that's the proof I wrote those myself. But I did use ChatGPT as a tool to polish my language because English is not my first language. I want to write something. I know what I want to express, but sometimes I was struggling to find the right word. But if the right word came to me, I know that's the right word. When I try to find that right word, it's really difficult. So I wrote everything by myself, but I did use ChatGPT as a kind of virtual assistant,
Okay.
help me to polish my language. And that's why in ChatGPT, I have one topic about ChatGPT. I think it is a double-edged sword. It's good, and it's also very bad things there. At the current situation, based on my limited experience and knowledge, I feel it's a trend unstoppable. We need to learn how to use it right. So people right now call it responsible AI. So I'm also trying to I'm also trying to learn a little bit on this part, make sure I do things right.
Yeah, that's
I
interesting.
love that. Well, I tried to have, I was experimenting with having it write poetry.
How did that
And,
work?
then I had it write poetry like along the lines of beat poets, or I had it do it like Shakespeare. And it's good at I would say it was sort of horrible, but it was fascinating.
Yeah, that's interesting. Or pattern matching run amok, right?
Yeah, like I saw the best lives of my generation running ragged down the ragged streets at dawn, screaming hysterical naked, whatever. And, and then have variations of that.
Right.
Yeah, similar like that electronic vehicle I put in my book. At that time, I did not think that far about the electronic vehicles. I thought it's a good ad, too expensive, not so safe. But right now, 3 years later, when I look at it, it's an inseparable part of the transportation system right now. That's the trend. If we go back to oil and gas industry, when I worked on conventional field and 20 years ago, people started the development of those unconventional field. At that time, I thought no big deal and too expensive to develop those acreage. It's a kind of a icing on the cake. Conventional is the way to go. But 20 years later, in United States, maybe 70% or 60% of daily oil production is from the unconventional field. Huge change. So something I feel I could take for granted with my limited knowledge. That's why I want to expand my network with Susan, with Ray, and add my knowledge base, understand more to make the right decision. And when I re-look about my thought about the unconventional field 20 years ago, I'm not taking anything for granted anymore.
That's wonderful. I totally agree with that.
Well, we are at the end of the show. I'm so glad you could make it with us today. Tell us a little bit more about your book. One more time. Let's put it up there.
It's fueling through the pandemic, reflections on the oil and gas industry in 2020. So I priced it at a price less than $10. So it's not try to make money, make a fortune from it, but rather than a collection of my thoughts during that time. And all the feedback comments are welcomed. And my secret plan is maybe 5 years later, I will revisit this book, rethink what else has been changed, and have a second edition. Knock on wood.
That sounds good. I'm sure
I love it. I just love it.
I'm sure we'll have many more dangerous events coming up at us. Who knows? But anyway.
Or maybe happy events.
And remember to invite me if I have the second edition, and I volunteer.
Absolutely.
No, that's great. Meisong, it's been a pleasure having you on. We look forward to seeing you again. Also getting some feedback as the book gets out there. Love to hear more about what people say and what kind of feedback you're getting. And it should be very interesting. Thank you again for coming on and sharing with us. And we will see you soon. Susan?
Oh, thank you. Really, really appreciate it. Look forward to reading the book. I'm ordering it now.
Thank you, and appreciate this opportunity to talk at Rick's show with Susan. And I think that I told people that's the silver lining of the pandemic. I got to know Susan. Now I got to know Rick. And you guys can add a lot of different knowledge and experience, insights to what I have learned so far. I'm eager to learn from you too.
No,
Oh,
that's
thank
true.
you.
We can all share. Anyway, have a good one. We appreciate you. If you're watching the show, please subscribe. Let us know what you think. And make comments underneath on the video if you want to hear any more about what Meisong is doing and how it's working. Just leave some comments below, and I'm sure we can all check on those and respond. Have a good one, everyone. We will see you soon on eLearnChat. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
And that's a wrap.